Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So I was just on vacation and I kind of discovered BookTok. Okay, I have always loved reading since I was a little girl. I think that having a hearing loss really made me love reading because you don't have to have any sort of social interaction and it's just beautiful and I love it. But I discovered a lot of BookTok books. I had already read a lot of them that were popular. Like I read Song of Achilles back when I was in high school, but I discovered Colleen Hoover, and so over the course of the past 3 weeks I've read like 6 of her books, and I've read a lot of books that are really hyped up and talked about, and I want to talk about them and tell you about all my books. Again, I have read a lot of books. I'm currently reading a lot of books that are super hyped up and popular, so if you want me to do like a ranking video or more book videos, I would love to do that because it's like my new obsession. Like I've always loved it, but I think I was in a little bit of a rut and now I'm obsessed. So I can't wait to tell you guys about all the books I've read over the past month. Alright, so the first book I read was You've Reached Sam by Dustin Thau. I think that's how you say it. I'm very sorry if I'm not pronouncing the author's name right, but I bought this when I was in England. I bought it for 2 reasons. I bought it because I thought the cover was really cool, and I also bought it because it's a really popular BookTok book, and I gotta say, I gave this one 2 stars. I did not like this one at all. Basically, this is about Julie and Sam dies in a car crash and everyone is grieving his death, but Julie can talk to him through the phone, but they only have a limited amount of time before they have to say bye, and this book is all about them and grief and how everyone's handling it, and that's what this book is about. It's a very fast read, but I have to say I was really just disappointed. I felt like the characters were really one-dimensional and I just did not like this book at all. I can see why it's hyped up because it's kind of like a unique storyline, but I gotta say this one really fell flat for me, so 2 stars I would not recommend. Then I discovered Miss Colleen Hoover. Okay, I've read 6 books by her and I don't know how that happened, but I still want to read more. So the first book I ever read was It Ends With Us, and I bought this at the airport. It was the only one left, so I was like, oh, it had to be a good book. I honestly didn't really hear that much about it. Like I knew it was a popular book, but I don't think I understood the depth of the popularity of this book. Like I just didn't get it. But this book is about Lily. Okay, Lily is in Boston and her dad just died, so she's on the roof just thinking about it, and then she meets Ryle. Okay, and Ryle is the love interest in this story, but then we also have Atlas, who is somebody from her past that we also learn about. So this book is in past and present, and I love it. We get to figure out her love story with Ryle, but we also learn about her past love with Atlas, and it's so good. I would definitely look up trigger warnings in this book. I knew nothing about this book. I didn't even know it was a romance. I just picked it up because I thought it was a cool cover and I had heard about it and I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but oh my gosh, it was so good. I was not expecting literally anything. Like I did not check trigger warnings or anything like that, but I definitely would if you know what triggers you. This book kept me on the edge of my seat until the very end because I thought I wasn't gonna like the way it ended, and then it ended up being so perfect, and I'm not gonna say anything more. If you're looking for a book to read, you have to. Like, you literally have to read this one. It is so good. 5 out of 5 stars. My first Coho book, and honestly, one of my favorites. It's not my absolute favorite by Colleen Hoover that I've read so far, but it is definitely up there. Oh my gosh. I love this book so much. Okay, then that started my Colleen Hoover obsession. Okay, so I'm gonna go through all the books that I read by her this month. I read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Now, I know this is a lot of people's favorite books, but I honestly didn't like this one that much. Like, kind of lost me. Okay, so this is about Miles and Tate, and it's dual POV. Tate's POV is in the present and she meets Miles, but he's really closed off and she doesn't know why, so they decide to have like a friends with benefits sort of situation, but he can't give her anything more than that. And then Miles's POV is in the past and you get to find out why he's so closed off, and it's written really beautifully, but the chapters are so short when it's from Miles' POV, and I wish they were longer because I just wanted more. When I was reading it, like initially it was a 5-star read because I got through it so fast, literally less than a day. Like I had to know what happened, but just taking time and reflecting on it a little bit more, like honestly, like I didn't think it was amazing. Like I'm not a fan of the plot and the storyline. I honestly don't think Miles is that good of a person in terms of his relationship with Tate. Like, he kind of treats her horribly, so I don't get the obsession with this book, so that's why it's a 3-star for me. But it's still good and I still recommend it. Okay, then I read November 9th. I would recommend reading Ugly Love before November 9th because there is a really cool crossover. It's not gonna make or break it, but it is really cool to see characters reappear. Miles and Tate do appear in this book, so that's really cool. But this book follows Ben and Fallon, and they meet one day before Fallon is about to move across the country, and they have this really cool kind of love story thing happening, but they decide to meet once every single year on November 9th, and they don't have any contact in between. They just meet on November 9th, and there is a huge plot twist in this book at the end. And honestly, like, it was a good read. It was really fast, but it wasn't my favorite. I didn't love the plot. I honestly, like, don't sense the chemistry between the two of them, so that's why I'm going to give it I'm gonna give it a 4-star, okay? Because I like it more than Ugly Love, but it's not a 5-star for me. But something about her writing, it's just so addicting, so I would recommend it if you like Colleen Hoover, but I would not start with this book. But it is a really unique plot, and she made it really realistic. Like, you wouldn't think that someone would only meet someone once a day for a year and not have any contact in between, but Coho made it realistic somehow. I remember being the most intrigued with this book before I started it because I thought it was such an interesting plot line, but I just didn't like the end, like the plot twist. Everything just seemed kind of for me. But let me know what you think if you like this book, because I know, again, a lot of people also love this book. Next, I read Verity by Colleen Hoover. Now, before I read any books by her, like, this is the only one that I wanted to read. I honestly looked for this book before I picked up It Ends With Us and I couldn't find it, and I'm glad I didn't, because if this had been my first read by her, I probably would not have read all of her other books. This is a solid 4-star for me, okay? Because I hated the ending. Let me back up and tell you what it's about. So basically, this book follows Lowen. She is an author, and she's kind of a failing author, but Verity is a really famous author, but she got in a car crash, so she cannot write any of her books. So Lowen gets hired to kind of be a ghostwriter for the rest of Verity's books. So she goes to her house, and there's kind of a little love story going on, and she finds this manuscript that Verity wrote, and it's insane. Like, it's literally crazy. And then, of course, there's a huge plot twist at the end, and it leaves you thinking. Like, I still think about this book sometimes, but I just don't like the way it wrapped up. If you want me to do like a spoiler video where I talk more in depth about these books, I can do that, but I'm not going to. I don't want to give anything away, but of course I read this in less than a day, like all of her other books, and I really liked it up until the end, but it just wasn't as satisfying to me as I thought it was going to be, so that's why it's a 4-star read. Okay, and then the other 2 books that I read by Colleen Hoover were actually on my Kindle, and my Kindle is kind of a new thing that I got, so I might make a video on it. But I read Heartbones by Colleen Hoover, and I literally, my favorite Coho book of all time. It's so good. So Heartbones is about Bea and Samson. Something tragic happens in her life, so she has to move with her dad, and her dad is way richer than she ever was. She comes from a poor household, and she's kind of navigating that and how weird that is. And then she meets Samson, who was living in the house next door, and they kind of fall in love. They have this really cute love story, and there's a plot twist at the end. And for the most part, this book is like so happy and so sweet, which is so different than Coho books. Like, they're usually really like crazy or sad, but this one would just like really feel good and awesome. And of course there was a plot twist at the end, and I loved it, and I cried, and it was perfect. Heartbones, I don't know why. I think generally people really like this book, but it's not their favorite, and I don't know why, because it's my absolute favorite Coho book that I've ever read. I highly recommend. And then the last one I read was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover, and I just finished this one yesterday. It is also a 5-star read for me. The quality of it is just like so much better than the other ones that I talked about. It is so good and just heartbreaking. Basically, it's about this woman who got out of prison, and she's trying to see her daughter. Her name is Kenna. So Kenna's trying to see her daughter after she got out of prison, but because of something that she did that got her in prison in the first place, everyone trying to keep her away. And then she has a love interest, but the love interest is the only connection to her daughter, and it's just like so conflicting because it's not black and white. The book kind of lives in the gray area of things, and it's just so sad, and like I just cried the whole time. And because of that, it's a 5. It's so good. Like the ending is so, like everything about the book, it's just so good. It's not my favorite Coho read just because it was like sad, and I love sad books, but it was just too sad for me. Like my heart could not take it. So but it is a 5-star read, and I would highly recommend you go read it. It is really good. The quality is up there. Reminders of him, so good. But Heartbones, all-time favorite, and I still plan on reading more. Okay, I'm just gonna talk about the other book that I read on my Kindle before I move to the rest of my physical copies, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I'm sure you've all heard of this. This is a really popular BookTok book, and I didn't want to read it at first because I just think it sounded really cheesy, but it is my best friend's favorite book, so I had to read it. This book is about 2 authors, January and Augustus, and they both move kind of up north so that they can get over their writer's block and write a book. The trope in this book is enemies to lovers, and it's honestly really cute. It's really sweet. I feel like nothing incredibly bad happened in this book, which is why I gave it 4 stars and not 5 stars, because it didn't make me really feel anything. But it's a super sweet book. They decide to trade genres, so January, she writes romance, and Gus writes literary fiction, so they switch genres, and they decide to kind of take each other on little dates to write their books, and it's really good and it's really sweet, and I can see why this is a lot of people's favorite book, and it is my favorite Emily Henry book because I did not like People We Meet on Vacation. I did not like that book, but Beach Read I really did like. I got through it in a day, and I honestly would recommend. It's a really good beach read or a pool read because, like I said, it's kind of light and nothing super bad happens. Then I read Sunset by Jessie Cave. I bought this in England, and it is so good. I highly recommend. I don't think you can buy this on Kindle, but if you can find this book, please buy it. It's a 5 out of 5 stars. It is so good. This is about 2 sisters, Ruth and Hannah, and they go on vacation every single year, but on one of their vacations something really sad happens. It's not really a spoiler, but Hannah ends up dying on one of their vacations, and this whole book is just centered around grief and finding yourself through grief and getting through grief. But it is so well done. It is not like You've Reached Sam. Like, it is so much better. It is 5 out of 5 stars. So good. It's about 400 pages. It's just so heart-wrenching, and I think I loved it so much because I have a sister myself, so I could find myself relating to it a lot. Like, I literally love this book so much, and I think it is probably my favorite book that I've read out of all of these, so really recommend this one. There's not a lot to say about it. It's just about 2 sisters and their love story kind of, and I love it. Then I read Boys Don't Cry by Fiona Scarlett. This is actually an Irish book, and I picked it up when I was in Scotland, and this is really good. It is really unlike anything I've ever read before. It is dual POV of 2 brothers, and you know that one of the brothers is gonna die from the very start, but they still tell it through his POV, and it's just beautiful. The older brother's POV is after his brother died, and the younger brother's POV is kind of during the whole process of him getting cancer and dying, but it's also about family struggles, and it's just so good and so deep, and I just love these books. Like, I'm not a romance person, although I've read a lot this month. I am really deep into like family dramas and just like tragic things happening and just like life in general, and I think that this book did a really good job of conveying that. 5 out of 5 stars. Really good. But if you just like light books, romance, don't read this because it is really sad. Then I read How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. 2 stars. It is her debut novel, but a lot of these authors, it's their debut novels, and it was so good. but How to Kill Your Family, no, I did not like this one. This is about Grace, and her mom died and she hates her dad and his entire side of the family, and you find out why she hates them, and she just goes through and kills every single one of her family members that are on her dad's side of the family. And there's kind of a plot twist at the end. The plot twist I kind of enjoyed, and it was kind of crazy, but it is not worth reading this book because it is so bad, because it goes off topic like all the time. It'll go on these little tangents that have nothing to do with the book or the plotline of the book, and it just really annoyed me and it got really boring. But there are some aspects of this that I do enjoy, but it just could have been done way better. And I've seen this one on BookTok, I think. I would not recommend it. Only 2 more books. So we have This Can Never Not Be Real by Sarah Milano. This is a 5-star read. Now, you have to look up trigger warnings before you read this book. This book has every trigger warning in the book. I'm gonna read it. It is a fictional account of a right-wing terrorist attack. This involves descriptions of violence, the aftermath of violence, including serious injury and death. Additional issues dealt with include suicide, some discussions of racial and faith-based microaggressions, and some negative body image. So the book is really deep. It really talks about everything. It is about 5 teenagers and it's told from 5 different POVs. It's super fast paced. I've never read anything like this. And basically a terrorist attack is happening and people are dying left and right, and it's about how they are handling it and the things that they do to survive. And it is beautiful and heart-wrenching. And I also love that the author never talks about the terrorists specifically and like their POVs or why they're doing it, because she said in her acknowledgement that this is just like not what the book is about. It's about the victims and the people that survived something horrible, and it is so good. It's definitely the most tragic and sad book that I've read this month, but it's so good because I read books like this and I just love them, and then I wonder why I even read like lighter romances, because this is just literally so good. But you have to like make the decision to read this book because it is so dark, but 5 stars. And then the last book that I have to talk about that I read, I have been wanting to read this book for so long. I finally read it on the plane ride home. This is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this is the only book I've ever read by her, but I want to read more books, especially One True Love and Malibu Rising. But this is so good. This book is basically about the 7 different husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn Hugo was about 79 years old. She called a journalist, Monique, to come write her story, and Monique doesn't know why she's being called to do this because Evelyn Hugo is literally a huge star and Monique is a journalist that's not even like at the top of her field. But you do find out later in the book like why she called Monique. This book is kind of separated into 7 parts that are her 7 husbands, so you kind of have present POV of Monique interviewing Evelyn, but then you also have past POV from Evelyn's perspective of her life story, and it's great. I literally love this book. It is so good. It's all about Hollywood glamour and drama and just like the things that she did for fame. There's so many different love stories, but there's also only one love story in this. I don't know. It's so good. I really like this book. I give it a 5 stars. I didn't think it was 5 stars when I initially read it, but I literally cannot stop thinking about this book. So that is why it's a 5-star read for me. So there you have it. Those are all the books that I've read in the past 3 to 4 weeks. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want me to do more book videos, please let me know. I would love to do them. I've had so much fun just sitting down and talking about different books. If you don't like reading, I would highly recommend that you get into it. It's literally so good. I love it. I love it so much. Alright, I will see you in my next video and have a great day.